Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Preview. 5 weeks to go until the Senior Choose Tap EFL Final Series, and we are all over it here on the Friday Preview. Looking forward to going through all the matches that will be occurring tomorrow afternoon. I'm Ben Waterworth, and joining me to go through all of those matches, as he does every week, it is the man who likes to squeeze udders to make money. It's Peter Baird.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good Friday afternoon to you, Ben Waterworth. Can't wait to rip through all the games. Only 21 on the agenda this week, with 4 games in Division 4, with 3 teams having the bye. So can't wait to get started.
And he's become a bit of a permanent fixture here on the Friday Preview and across a lot of our EFL programs. A good afternoon to Daniel Cencic.
Very good Friday, Arvo, to you, Ben, and to Peter Baird. Oh, it's always a pleasure to be on this program.
Let's start in Division 4. As you said, Pete, only 4 games in Division 4, and we're going to have a look at Surrey Park taking on South Belgrave out there at Surrey Park. The Panthers, they gave Sylvan a scare last weekend.
They were very, very gallant, the Panthers, when they ventured up the mountain to the Sylvan Recreation Reserve last week to take on the Cats. The big Cats versus the little Cats up there at Sylvan Recreation Reserve. Surrey Park led all day until the 23-minute mark of the final quarter. We spoke to Surrey Park coach Andrew Toop on the huddle on Wednesday night. He was very proud of his boys' performance, but I reckon they'll have their work cut out for them this week. South Belgrave have been one of the form teams of Division 4 this year. They've only dropped the 1 game. They're in fantastic form right across the park. Interesting to see a young guy getting a go up at the South Belgrave Football Club, Dean Apostolopoulos.
Oh, yes.
Get your mouth around that one, Benny Waterworth.
Cannot wait to call that one.
He's been in their best the last couple of weeks. Good to see a young kid making an impact in a top side in Division 4. Lucas Appleby's just going from strength to strength. The old man of the Saints, he kicked 6 last week for them in their 57-point win over Nunawading. Hard to see Surrey Park being competitive against the Saints. They've had good service this year out of Scott Dornath, Seamus Herrick and their captain Matt Jeffries, but I think the Saints will be too strong and they should get a win by around 10 goals, I reckon.
We also talked to a psychic on Wednesday night, Peter Baird, who predicted that Surrey Park would get a win in the remaining 4 weeks of the 2012 season. I don't think it'll be this week. I think that South Belgrave will win, but watch out, the Panthers will win in the next 4 weeks. Interesting contest looms at the Canterbury Sports Ground tomorrow afternoon, Dan, with Canterbury taking on the Eastern Lions. The Lions simply need to win to have any chance of making the 2012 Finals series.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Ben, and Canterbury were very disappointing last week against an informed Ferntree Gully side. They went down by about 11 goals and not too good for them. They need players to stand up because more often than not this season, too much has been left to too few, and players such as Wormsley, Augustinus, Beadle and Carroll and a couple of others have had to bear too much of a load out there at the Canterbury Sports Ground. But team effort is all they're after for the remainder of the 2012 season. It's something they'll really want to instill, and even though results do not always fall your way with a full contribution, it will leave them in better chances of turning things around. And of course, the Eastern Lions are coming off the bye. They're in absolutely fantastic form at the moment, with 5 of their players, Darren Murphy, Lee Rankin, Daniel Russo, David Want, Gareth Bailey, all fantastic goal kickers for them. And here's what I think will be Canterbury's undoing tomorrow afternoon. They're ranked 2nd in Division 4 for scores against. And if you look at players like the ones I just mentioned, Darren Murphy has 18 goals, Lee Rankin has 16, Daniel Russo has 12, David Want's got 11 and Gareth Bailey's got 10. It should be too much firepower for Canterbury to handle.
The Eastern Lions simply need to win this game. They currently sit in 7th position. Canterbury just want the end of the season, but the Eastern Lions want finals, and they'll want to win tomorrow. Wow-wee. Ferntree Gully Eagles taking on Sylvan in the 98.1 Radio Eastern /EFL.org.au match of the day. EFL Game Day will be out at Ferntree Gully Reserve for tomorrow's big clash. Peter Baird, 3rd spot is on the line when these 2 teams clash.
It is, as you said, Ben Waterworth, 3rd versus 4th on the Division 4 ladder. Besides South Belgrave and the Basin, who we believe may be a class above the rest of Division 4, these are the best of the rest, these 2 sides. They will be fighting it out for 3rd spot on the ladder in our radio game this week. Ferntree Gully, they're on a bit of a roll at the moment. They've put a few good wins together in a row. It's really been on the back of standout performances from guys like Paul Giannopoulos, Ricky Aitken, a forward line boasting Paul Hagar, and the excitement machine Ryan Pearce.
Oh, yes.
Ben Rawlings is doing a great job for them. Michael Topp's playing a bit of a different role this year, moving to centre-half back. But for Sylvan, I was really impressed when I saw them knock off the Eastern Lions a few weeks ago. They were challenged all day last week against Surrey Park, but at the end of the day, the cream rose to the top. Big Dan Toohey, he kicked 7, 5 of those, I believe, in the last quarter, and the second half of the last quarter, just when his team needed a response, he was one that lifted and helped get them up over the line. Adam Newing's been a dynamo through the midfield for them, as has Sean Toohey. Rhett Newell's added a bit of strength and a bit of class, whether in the back line or in the ruck. Ash Froud, you have to watch Ash Froud every week. He's just one of those players that commands respect, whether he's playing in First Division or Division 4 with Sylvan. This is going to be a ripper. I'm going for Sylvan in a little bit of an upset, only on ladder position. Ferntree Gully in 3rd and Sylvan in 4th. I reckon the Cats can take it up to Ferntree Gully. They had a scare last week against Surrey Park, but they rose and met that challenge. This week's going to be a different story. They're going to go into this game ready to take on the Eagles, and I reckon they can get the win.
Ash Froud and Daniel Toohey, they need to be stopped for Ferntree Gully to win this game, and I get the feeling that the Eagles will be able to do it. Paul Hager's been a bit of a revelation since coming over to the Eagles this season. I'm going for Ferntree Gully, the home team. They know what it takes to play in the finals. They know how to win. Sylvan don't quite know how to win yet. Final game in Division 4 tomorrow, Daniel Cencic is Nunawading taking on Park Orchards. A must-win game for Nunawading if they want to play finals this year.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. They're 6 on the ladder, sitting 6 and 5 at the moment. And their loss last week to South Belgrave was very disappointing. And they come up against a Park Orchard side who went down very closely to Forest Hill last weekend. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond this week. Their main problems were controlling the Shoulders boys and Michael Cardamone, who were the overriding difference in the end. So it's those tall forwards that they really struggle holding. And here's what might be a problem for Park Orchards tomorrow. Sam McCullum, been a great goal kicker this year for Nunawading with 42 goals. Reece Harrop, 23. Nathan Holly, 21. So Park Orchards are going to have their hands full there. But one player we really should talk about for Park Orchards is Jonathan Dressing. Been fantastic this season. Been that link across half forward and can play deep in the forward line for the Sharks. I just get the feeling that Nunawading have too much class. Aidan Suckle's been named in the best 6 times, so he's been fantastic for them this year. And Stephen Alderton's had a great year as well. Nunawading should get this one done.
On paper, you just think Nunawading's a much classier outfit than Park Orchards, but you can't go past the recent form of Park Orchards. Very unlucky not to get a victory last weekend. And I just get the feeling with the likes of Jonathan Balsamic Dressing, I reckon that the Park Orchards Football Club might be able to cause a bit of an upset out there at Coonung Reserve. There you have it, done and dusted. Division 4, only 4 games this weekend with the Basin, Kilsyth and Forest Hill all having the bye. Let's have a look at Division 3. Some ripper games going on in Division 3 and none bigger, Peter Baird, than the Templestowe and North Ringwood clash. However, after Templestowe's loss last weekend, I reckon this game's lost a little bit of gloss.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, Ben Waterworth. Templestowe are still 4th on the ladder. North Ringwood still occupying their usual spot atop of the Division 3 ladder. The Dockers had won 7 in a row prior to last week before coming up against Wantirna South at Walker Reserve. They had to lose a game sooner or later, and I think the Devils caught them on a bad day. I think a big key for Templestowe last week was Wantirna South were able to keep Kane McGarmes quiet. He kicked 2 goals late in the final quarter, but in the last 6 games prior to that, he'd kicked 30 goals. He's been on fire this year for the Dockers. North Ringwood, they just go from strength to strength week in, week out. Matty Weeks has been fantastic for them this year, as has Daniel Wood and Anthony Sharp. They're a seasoned team. They've got some bigger bodies. I think Templestowe, though, will come to play this game. I know John Brown. I know the way he coaches. He's an honest man. He works hard, and he will expect a workmanlike performance to get his team back on the track this week. I think Templestowe will take it right up to North Ringwood. They won't be at all complacent. They would have been shocked into action by their performance last week. I think they can match North Ringwood, but the Saints, they're just so honest and they will get over the line even in a tight one. I'm tipping North Ringwood, but by the barest of margins.
There's no doubt that Templestowe will try and want to make amends after last weekend's very disappointing performance, but I agree with you, Pete. North Ringwood, for mine, they need a big scalp, and I get the feeling they'll get a big scalp out there at Porter Street tomorrow afternoon. Jubilee Park plays host to the game between Ringwood and Warrandyte tomorrow. Daniel Cencic. Can anyone from the Warrandyte defence stop James Katsiavos and Trent Farmer.
Oh, they're in fantastic form, there's no doubt about it. 90 goals between them for the year. Look, Ringwood were really badly stung last weekend against an informed North Ringwood outfit. Although we can applaud them for getting within a goal of the team to beat in Division 3, still registers as a loss, and we know a club like the Redbacks do demand results. Look, Warrandyte are coming off another win, and they'll be in positive spirits, no doubt about it. And what I've liked about the Bloods in the last month of footy is that even though the results haven't always been there all season, it hasn't changed their approach, and they've managed to get a few wins on the board, which has been a positive for them. I think every game leading till the end of the season for Ringwood is like a mini-final. They sit in that pack of logjam teams from 5th to 8th on the Division 3 ladder, all on 7 wins and 6 losses. Ringwood in 5th place, of course. So this game's one they'll really need to win. And Ben Waterworth, you mentioned Katsiavos Farmer. Michael King's another one who's been in brilliant form, as has Timothy Burmeister. I cannot go past him as one of the best players in Division 3 this season. He's been absolutely fantastic. I would like to tip Warrandyte because they have shown a lot of spirit lately, but Ringwood for mine.
The Bloods are certainly a much improved team, particularly over the past month of football. They're a much improved side. John O'Brien doing a good job down there, but Josh Toohey doing an even better job with this Ringwood Football Club. I think the Redbacks will play in the finals this season, and I think they will win tomorrow. Big game tomorrow afternoon, Peter Baird, with Boronia hosting Wantirna South out there at Tormore Reserve. With all respect to the Whitehorse Pioneers last weekend, I think this is Drew O'Hare's biggest test to date.
I think it might be. Wantirna South have knocked over already the Glen Waverley Hawks and North Ringwood, the teams that sit 1 and 2 on the Division 3 ladder. This week they'll be gunning for team number 3 in Boronia, who occupy 3rd spot on the ladder. The Devils are making a charge at finals. They've had a start to the year that was crippled with injuries, and Coach Matty Clark put it on some of his younger players to rise to the challenge this year. They've answered the call brilliantly. Guys like Taylor Leggett, Jackson Freeman, Timmy Lee, named in their best 8 times this year, playing in key position role in the back line. He's been fantastic. And you throw in the experienced guys they've got going in their side, Daniel Bedome, Chris Phillips, Scotty Edgecombe. I reckon the Devils have got the mix they need to be one of the powerhouse teams of Division 3. We saw them play Division 2 last year. Stepping down, they should play finals. I think they will this year. A hurdle they need to overcome this week, though, is against a Boronia side that's seen the departure of Coach Peter Bennett in the last fortnight. Drew O'Hare's taken over the range. They got the job done last week against Whitehorse Pioneers by 62 points. Jess Bolton and Jess Moore, the 2 Jesses, have been great for them. Nathan Allen, Patrick Garrity, Luke Allison have been super as well. I don't know. I just reckon Wantirna South are on a huge roll this week. They're in Frosty's furnace in tomorrow's record, and I reckon they'll duly salute and pick up a win against the Hawks tomorrow out at Tormore Reserve.
Wantirna South certainly have to clear a big hurdle tomorrow afternoon. Baroni's a class outfit, and I don't think they'll be able to clear it. Jason Heath has played the last 3 games and he's kicked 14 goals. In my opinion, he will be the difference between the 2 sides tomorrow. He's an outstanding player, and Baroni's an outstanding team that needs to get higher up the ladder, and Drew O'Hare will coach his team to a victory tomorrow. A very good afternoon to Graham McCallum of the Mitchum Football Club, and a beautiful segue because Mitchum host Chirnside Park tomorrow afternoon. Mitchum need to win this game if they want to stay in touch with that top 5. Can they do it, Dan?
I certainly think they can. And we talk about sides like Ringwood having mini-finals from here on in. Mitchum are no exception. They're 8th on the ladder, and they're in that logjam of teams in Division 3. I think a huge win for Mitchum last week after many of us thought Heathmont would get the job done. In a nutshell, the difference was their spread of goal kickers. Sell kicked 3, Glossop, Faulkner and Godfrey with 2 each, and Stevens, Kelly and Marrow with singles. They were absolutely outstanding for Mitchum, and this has been a huge weakness for Chirnside Park Footy Club this season. They haven't been able to find the goals, even though they've been inside 50 quite a bit, so there's a bit lacking there in that area for them. Their kicking has let them down and reflected on their season to date. The challenge this week will be whether they can stem the bleeding of goals that's happened the other way. But Ohm a few weeks had a day out against the Chirnside Park Footy Club, and those Mitchum forwards I just mentioned and goal-kicking midfielders are certainly grounds for concern. Pepping's a really reliable defender for Chirnside Park, and Jason Ince we often see him pushing up the ground and filling the space in front of those key forwards. But I just think Mitchum, too much firepower at home, should get the job done.
Just having a look at how many players Chirnside Park have used this season, they have used 44 players in the senior team. So it just seems to me that they haven't been able to get that senior team balance right, and I don't think they'll be able to get the balance right tomorrow. Mitchum need to win this game, and they should win it quite well. Heathmont and the Glen Waverley Hawks, Peter Baird, played out one of the best grand finals you will ever see last year, and they meet again, this time in Division 3. Who's going to take this one out?
Yeah, we had a look at this as the radio game earlier in the year out at H.E. Parker Reserve. Heathmont got the jump on the Hawks that day, but Glen Waverley rose to the challenge. They fought back and they eventually ran away with the game. The player of the day that day was Big Fia Tutu. We speak about him a lot on the media team. He's one of our favourites, but he missed last week against the Chirnside Park side, despite the Glen Waverley Hawks winning by 65 points. He is very important to their structures if they're playing Heathmont. We know Heathmont have the two big power forwards in Darren Sheen and Lee Odermatt. Sheen kicked 5 last week, but it wasn't enough to get Heathmont over the line against Mitchum. I just think Heathmont might be too reliant on Sheen and Odermatt both kicking goals. Although Odermatt didn't kick a goal last week, he was named in the best for Heathmont, which is a little bit strange. Perhaps Steve Buckle's using him in a different role of late. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. I think they need to both be kicking goals if they're going to get over the Glen Waverley Hawks, and I think Fia Tutu needs to play for the Hawks if they're going to get over Heathmont. There's a lot of questions, a lot's up in the air. One thing I do know this year is the Glen Waverley Hawks are one of the top teams in Division 3. They've shown they've got that class, and a lot of that class has come from an addition to their side this year, Sammy Zickman, who's joined the Hawks from Mulgrave Footy Club. He's been super. Disco Danny Kennor, he's been great in the ruck, and he's got really good help from an unsung hero of the Glen Waverley Hawks in the big Navinda Singh, a big ruckman they used to give Kennor a chop out. I'm heading out to Capital Reserve tomorrow, Ben in Waterworth. I'm going to have a look at this game and give you an after-game report. This is going to be a ripper. I'm tipping the Glen Waverley Hawks to get over the line, though.
Both of these teams came up from Division 4 last year, and what we've seen so far, the Glen Waverley Hawks have adjusted a little bit better to Division 3 football, and I think they'll prove it once again like they proved earlier on in the season, the Hawks for mine. The Whitehorse Pioneers make the very, 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 very long trip up to Arctic Park, Coldstream Reserve tomorrow, Dan Cencic. It's pretty simple for mine. Whoever loses this gets relegated down to Division 4.
Oh, yeah, very important game for both sides. A close one was expected for Coldstream last week against Warrandyte, but they were convincingly beaten. Very disappointing on the day. But it's a great chance this week for redemption, but not only for the Cougars, but also for the Whitehorse Pioneers, who had a really heavy loss to Boronia. Johnny Pignataro didn't have the day I expected him to have last weekend, but in fairness to him, it wasn't a day for key forwards right around the Eastern Football League, so we could see him put on a big one tomorrow afternoon. And the Whitehorse Pioneers leaking some pretty hefty scores so far. They haven't had the goal kickers that Coldstream have had. They're the lowest ranking side in Division 3 for scores for, so that could be grounds for concern for the Whitehorse Pioneers. Coldstream, on the other hand, they've had players like Pignataro, Griffiths, Reese, Gordon, Price, Usla, Mills, Horn as well has been good for them as well. Coldstream have been better defensively and better attacking. Logical thing is to go with Coldstream.
Out at Arctic Park, I think my man the Pig is going to have a very, very big day. Watch out for Johnny Pignataro to have a big win. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get out of Division 4, and the Whitehorse Pioneers, by the end of the game, will probably have to face that task. Coldstream for mine. Division 3 is as close as I have seen it for quite some time, and plenty of games tomorrow will have a big say in how the home and away season ladder looks after round 18. Make sure you get out and see some of those games. Speaking of great games, though, Division 2 has 5 great ones on offer. Let's have a look, Peter Baird, at your boys, the Roble Football Club. They host the Waverly Blues in what could be a bit of an ugly encounter in terms of margin.
We perhaps thought that was going to be the case earlier in the year as well when Roble ventured out to Mount Waverley Reserve to take on the Waverley Blues. But the Blues surprised Roble that day. They led all day until the last 2 minutes of the game when Roble snatched a victory off them. At that stage of the year, Roble were undefeated. They've since dropped a couple of games, but now they are still on top of the Division 2 ladder. What I've really liked about the Hawks this year is the way they're able to mix up their defenders and forwards. We see guys like Brendan Walsh, Mason Crozier, Michael Bussey alternating between forward line and defence. It keeps opposition coaches guessing. One thing, though, that Paul Minot won't have to guess about tomorrow, he knows the Waverley Blues will have 3 big forwards. Tom Harley, Glenn Marnie and Robbie Hartfield. They've kicked 78 goals between them. The Hawks need to shut them down, so expect those Roble bigs to go back and play on them. It's not going to be a huge problem, though, for the Hawks. Nathan Hicks has kicked 33 goals for the year, and midfielder Matty Stanley's kicked 30. When you throw into the mix one of my favourite boys, Ben Waterworth, Alex Frawley.
Oh, yes.
He's been named in Roble's best 8 times this year. He's a shoo-in for the Division 2 Team of the Year this year, mark my words. Roble, led by Robbie McEwen, who's having a fantastic season as well, and with the return of the Zig, Adam Zigarink in the last few weeks, they've added a new dimension to their side. The Hawks should get this one. They should get it comfortably, and I expect them to win easily.
Any team that adds a man with the last name Ziggering into it certainly lifts in stature. For mine, Roble will be too strong tomorrow. Cannot believe that Matty Stanley has put through 30 goals this season. He's a much improved player because he's added another dimension to his game. Hawks quite easily at home. Raw! Mulgrave and Doncaster East take on each other in the Pride of the Lions battle tomorrow afternoon. Dan Cencic, who will be the Lion King?
Oh, it's going to be really interesting. Mulgrave are about the story of the week in the EFL, getting their drought-breaking win last week against Doncaster. But what everyone is waiting to see is how do they back up after such a good win. It was interesting last week against Doncaster. They were able to maybe nullify those influences of the anarchist types, the Batista types and Limachisi. So they want to do the same jobs again on Daniel Mead, Michael Parthenides, Lee Murphy, Papa Constantinou. Those sorts of players will really go a long way to getting the result that they're after. But it's going to be interesting to see how quickly that Mulgrave get on with things and focus on their opponents this week in Doncaster East. They've got formidable opponents there, of course, but look, let's not forget Mulgrave. Siya Koulis has been brilliant this year for them. Tim Knowles, absolutely fantastic player, one of their best. It's a real toss of the coin, this one. I would love to go for Mulgrave to get their second win in a row, but I just think Doncaster East, with players like Travis Gordon and Rami Ayubi, Shane Thompson in good form as well, Tim Whitty, fantastic player for them. You can't go past Doncaster East. They should get by this one by about 4 goals.
Between you and I, gentlemen, and of course all our Friday preview listeners/viewers, Tim Knowles is a very, very good chance to go to a higher level next year. He's been named in the best 12 out of 13 times, and trust me, people at a high level know he's around. For mine, I reckon Mulgrave will win their second game in a row. Great to see Adam Booth back in the goal kickers last weekend. He booted 5, and I think he might kick upwards of that same figure tomorrow afternoon. Mulgrave at home in a bit of a mini upset. Possibly game of the round in Division 2 tomorrow, big boy, is Montrose taking on Donvale. I think we'll find out just how good Donvale is tomorrow afternoon.
And we will also find out what sort of form Montrose are in. We've seen them drop 2 of their last 3 games. Their only win in that time was against Mulgrave, and it was only just. The Demons aren't travelling as well as they were earlier in the year. Donvale, though, they've staked a claim for that 4th spot on the Division 4 ladder. They want to play finals this year. They've already claimed a big scalp this year already in Roeville. They'll be looking to claim another one tomorrow afternoon when they head out to Montrose Reserve to take on the Demons. Last week, a key reason why Montrose didn't get the points was their 2 key forwards were held to 1 goal for the afternoon. Billy Schilling and Adam Cook, they've kicked 83 goals between them so far this year. Last week, Schilling got 1 and Cook didn't trouble the scorers. That's a huge impact upon Montrose's scoring power. Dean Stephen, though, he's great for Montrose. He works hard through the midfield, as does Sam Goodman and Langdon, Beninga, those types. Montrose, they're a glamour team of Division 2, but I don't reckon they're travelling that well at the moment. Donvale, though, they found a forward this year in Nick Murphy, who's filled the void of Jack Purcell being out of the side over the last couple of weeks. He kicked 7 last week to take his season total to 33. And Jason Wade, in his 300th game, he was named best on ground for the Magpies. Simon Di Stefano's having a great year for them as well. I think that Donvale can take it up to Montrose, but I don't think they can beat them. I'm getting splinters in my backside sitting on the fence with this one, Benny Waterworth, but I'm going to go for the D's.
Donvale certainly lifted last weekend for one of their favourite sons, the ultimate boss, Jason Wade, who actually he kicked 2 goals for the day, and they were at the start of the game when Donvale were down, and at the end of the game when Donvale needed someone to lift. So Donvale certainly know how to win big games. This is a huge game, no doubt, against Montrose. I get the feeling Donvale will stick with the D's for the first half, but out there at Montrose Recreation Reserve, the D's should be able to run away with it in the second half. Upper Ferntree Gully have been a bit of an enigma this season, Daniel Cencic, and they faced a big test against Murrowbark last weekend, who are hot, hot, hot.
Yeah, Upper Ferntree Gully have been a very hard team to read so far this season. But if Murrowbark hadn't already announced themselves in season 2012, they certainly did it last weekend against Montrose, who were widely tipped to get over the line, and it was in very trying conditions out at Heights Reserve. Players such as Linford, the best and fairest from last year, Michael Smith, Polkinghorne, Scotty Demetriou, and Roach, all really standing up and putting on the physical pressure early, and that is exactly what went a long way to getting the results on the scoreboard. Look, it wasn't a day for tall forwards, but Talevsky still provided great value in his presence, bringing the ball to ground, splitting packs, and even kicking a few himself. Upper Ferntree Gully, they've got plenty of class in their side. Jay Sherlock's a good player. Calder's been fantastic for them. Timmy Risley, and of course Bradley Carroll. But I just can't go past Murrowbark at the moment. They're in red-hot form, and those players that I mentioned really love to put their head over the ball and have a crack. I'm going to go for Murrowbark.
Murrowbark have been able to keep the same 22 on the field for the majority of the season. There haven't been too many changes week in, week out. They've had some good luck with injuries, and they've just had some consistency on the field. And we saw just how consistent they were against Montrose last weekend. Up to Ferntree Gully, far from inconsistent, and I think Murrowbark will be able to get a win away from home at Kings Park. Final game in Division 2 sees Bayswater hosting Doncaster. We've mentioned a number of times throughout the program so far, Peter Baird, about must-win games. This is simply a must-win game for Bayswater. Otherwise, they start to lose touch with that top four.
We've seen in the past, the Friday preview talk about Last Chance Saloon. This is truly Last Chance Saloon this week for the Bayswater Football Club. They come up against a Doncaster side who have been less than impressive over the last 2 months of football. Doncaster were 2-3 after 5 rounds this year, a very respectable record coming up from Division 3, but have lost their last 8 games on the trot to fall down to 9th position on the ladder. With their defeat at the hands of Mulgrave last week, they're now fighting the relegation battle with the Lions, who have hit a little bit of form. Doncaster need a more even performance across the field. We know how good their top few players are, guys like Lumachese, Anarchus, Batista, Ben McGarnis, both Schimmelbush boys, Matt and Troy, but it's their second-tier players that need to shoulder the load and try and rise to the challenge. Bayswater, their season's on the line, and I reckon their chances may hinge upon whether or not some of the players that missed last week through injuries were late admissions can get up and get back into the side. Guys like Wayne McInerney, Matt Hayhurst, Sandor Redzik, they all missed last week's loss to the Roble Hawks. They need to be firing and back in the side at their best for Bayswater to get up. I think that's going to happen. Joel Gelvin's had a great year for the Waters this year, as has Mitch Gelvin, his brother, Hayden Schroeder. I think the Waters will have a little bit too much class. Doncaster, they can't do anything right at the moment, and I don't think they're going to do a lot right tomorrow out at the Bayswater Oval. The Waters at home, they'll have a good win.
Wayne McInerney was a huge loss for the Waters last weekend, and they need him back in the side. And I think Bayswater will be able to get a victory. Despite my man, the Cheese, being in fantastic form, the Waters should get this one at home. 5 great games in Division 2 tomorrow. Good luck to your team if you are a Division 2 supporter. Let's have a look at Division 1, starting to get towards the business end of the season. And one team that will certainly be featuring in September this season is the Balwyn Football Club. And they take on South Croydon, Dan, who has gone through a change of coach this week. Damien Franken will be stepping into the helm in place of Ben Delarue.
Well, it's interesting because usually teams that get a new coach often come out and win the next week, but I can't see it happening this week against the red-hot, mighty Balwyn Tigers outfit. Look, South Croydon have been disappointing for a while now, and unfortunately they come up against this Tigers team with plenty of superstars in it, and Balwyn stood up last week when it counted the most against rivals Blackburn. They held on in the end for a very gutsy win, and the good teams win the close ones, and they have quality on the park to match it with South Croydon. Jeffrey Goebbels is a fantastic player, as is Luke Barker. 42 goals between them for the year. Ryan McMahon just continues to go from strength to strength, as does Rennie Gilchrist, and Benjamin Harris is a really hard-running midfielder, can do damage both ways. I think this is going to be a very one-sided affair. I'm going to go for Balwyn.
Listening to you just reel off those names, Daniel Cencic, just makes me want to pick Balwyn even more and more. Tigers for mine. Peter Baird, this is the classic example of the unstoppable force against the immovable object, with Vermont, the best offensive team in Division 1, taking on Norwood, the best defensive team in the competition. More importantly, Norwood on top of the ladder, Vermont a 4th.
Is it a case of the hunter versus the hunted this year in Division 1, Ben Waterworth?
Ooh, we'll find out.
Norwood, they've assumed the role of the hunted. They sit a game clear on top of the Division 1 ladder, where Vermont, they're rising from the pack after missing finals for the last 2 years. The Eagles don't like the fact that they haven't participated in September action. They're not used to that, and they're making a big charge at September this year. I really like the way they've gone about their business this year. Ryan Mullett, he's the best player in Division 1 at the moment, make no doubt about it. He's been fantastic for them. He's got support this year from Dean Kelly, Nathan Henley, and Jared Dalton's been fantastic up forward for them. I reckon tomorrow's battle could be decided in the ruck. Big Robbie Ross taking on Big John O'Wynn. The two of the premier ruckmans in Division 1. Norwood thrive on strangling their opposition. Last week they kept Knox to 6 goals. The week before they kept Balwyn to 4. That's what Ben Waterworth talks about when he talks about the immovable object. They're very hard to score against. Their backline's been fantastic this year with the two Johnson boys down there. Brett English is providing them with a target up forward. Jakey Ford's going through the midfield, as is Shane Clayton. I really like the way Coach Kevin Tabaldi set this team up. They're playing disciplined footy. but Vermont, they're irresistible at the moment. I'm going to pick the Eagles. I'm sorry I can't throw any love your way this week again, Kevin Tiboldi, but the Eagles will have a good win at home. Vermont are making their charge, and they'll pick up a win here.
The winner of this game will be the team who gets the contest on their terms first. In my opinion, at home, I think Vermont will be able to get it on their terms. A high-scoring, free-flowing game of football. At home, the Eagles should be too strong. East Ringwood hosts Blackburn tomorrow afternoon, Daniel Cencic. Two of the most disappointing teams, I think it's fair to say, and I think they both admit it, in Division 1 this season.
Yeah, on the contrary, Blackburn were pretty impressive last weekend against one of Division 1's premier sides, coming within a kick, of course. But both teams will be out for blood this week. One coming off a close loss, and East Ringwood, very disappointing showing against an out-of-form East Burwood. But look, the captain for Blackburn in great form. Prendergast kicked 3 goals last weekend and is very hard to stop. The type of player he is able to get away from opponents and sneak goals and runs hard both ways. So East Ringwood might want to have a look at a match-up there. But you're right, Ben. I think Blackburn have been very disappointing this season, but the last few weeks they've kind of lifted a bit. We have to remember they had a few good forwards leave in the off-season, so I think this season they've really been trying to experiment around with a few forward structures, and Graham Johns has really filled the void there. He's kicked 20 goals so far this season. As I said, the captain, Michael Prendergast, continues to kick goals for them. And one man I want to talk about here is Christian Height. He was fantastic last week, especially against those better Baldwin defenders. Rod Crow's fantastic defender for Baldwin, and he really stood up to the occasion. But at the other end, of course, for East Ringwood, we've got Gary Connors, we've got Luke Vogels, we've got Anthony Van Ruin, who can do damage on the scoreboard themselves. This one's a real toss of the coin, but I think I'm going to go with East Ringwood just because they're due for a win.
You're right, Dan. A huge toss of the coin game between these two sides. I'm going with Blackburn purely because of their comeback against Baldwin last weekend. Would have given them plenty of confidence, and East Ringwood just can't take a trick at the moment. Blackburn for mine. On paper, Peter Baird, Noble Park and Knox is a pretty interesting context because if Noble Park drop this one and Knox wins, maybe there's a little bit of a twist in the tail in this Division 1 final series.
Went and had a look at Noble Park firsthand last week as they hosted Scoresby out at the Bullring. I never pick against Noble Park at home, but Scoresby was super. They made Noble Park play un-Noble Park-like football. It's very rare you see the Bulls turn the ball over and be deprived of space and not be able to get any run going. That was what happened to them last Saturday. They needed more out of some of their more experienced players, guys like Ziggy Olwen, Stewie Kemperman and Glen Manson. They had little impact on the contest last week. For them to get over Knox, they need a good game out of them. Where Noble Park were impressive last week was some of the young kids that were standing up and putting their best hand forward for the Bulls. Guys like Luke Cody, Tyson Mitchum, Matty Pearce, Daniel Galante, they were their best sort of players last week. Noble Park, they just didn't gel on the day. They won't have 2 bad games at home. They come up against the Knox team that have fallen off the pace a little bit this year. Maybe the tougher draw after making finals last year has had an impact on the Falcons. I'm not so sure. Brian Jeffrey needs to lift for them. They are very reliant on Luke Williams. He's had a good year, as has Jakey Castricum. But a player I like for the Falcons is Jared Lepore. He's come into the side in the last 2 weeks and been named in their best in both occasions. So he's a player to watch for the Falcons in the future. I don't think Knox will be able to take it up to Noble Park at the Pat Wright Senior Oval. I'm sticking with my rule. You don't pick against Noble Park at home. The Bulls will win this one.
Your rule cost me a tip last weekend, Peter Baird, but I'm going to stay with you here as well. I'd love it if Knox would be able to get up tomorrow afternoon and really cause a bit of a spanner in the works, but Noble Park at home, they'll be so keen to get a victory tomorrow, and they won't let you or I down, Peter Baird. Croydon hosts East Burwood at Hughes Park tomorrow afternoon, Dan Cencic. East Burwood getting back on the winners list and looking forward to seeing how they go. They're being led beautifully by Marcus Carroll this year, who's a huge chance for the Division 1 Best and Fairest award. Yeah, there's no doubt Carroll's been a really, really good player for them this year. And look, East Burwood last week defied most tipsters with a great win against East Ringwood. But the word is, it was a very average game out there. Both sides didn't produce finals-like football, but they showed us that they're still capable of winning games of footy. And I asked the question in last week's Friday preview, where are the Gribbons types, where are the Marianis, Carroll, Campbell, and they certainly came out last week, proved me wrong and made a statement. But Croydon may fancy themselves in this one, given how good they've managed to put in respectable performances against some of the competition's best sides. So if they can do it against some of the competition's best, they can maybe do it against some of the competition's kind of middle-of-the-road-like sides. I'm talking about games against Norwood where Croydon got within 19 points, so they'll take a lot of confidence out of those sorts of games, but I just think East Burwood are too strong.
Anthony Mariani, he's a fantastic player that plays a bit of midfield and forward. Robbie Campbell dominating the rucks as well. Daniel Gribben and Stephen Henshaw up forward. Great players for them. But on the other side of the coin, we've got Brendan Weinart and Justin Ficcarelli, Lee Kimpton as well, who have really stood up to the plate and given them goals in the last few weeks. They've got 44 goals between them, so the East Burwood defenders are going to have their hands full there. But I think East Burwood will get another win here, and it'll be 2 in a row for them.
I look at Croydon's top 5 players, that core group of senior players, Justin Fischerelli, Dale Bull, Andrew Hughes, Brad Kelleher, Jimmy Grant. They can match it with some of the best teams in Division 1. Unfortunately for Croydon, though, they just don't have that depth to match it with some of these top sides. And East Burwood will be confident after the last weekend's victory, and I think they'll continue that momentum tomorrow afternoon. You can take a breath just in a few minutes, Peter Baird, because we've got one final game to go through, and it is Scoresby hosting Lilydale. Earlier on in the season, Lilydale caused a bit of an upset. Can they do it again?
They certainly can. They're the informed team of Division 1, perhaps behind Norwood and Vermont at the moment, the Lilydale Falcons. Last week, they were super impressive as they disposed of South Croydon by 86 points to stake a claim at perhaps challenging for a spot in the final 5 if one of those top 5 teams falls over in the last 6 rounds of the year. This week they meet one of those sides, and a side that was very, very impressive as they defeated the Noble Park Bulls on their own patch last week at the Pat Wright Senior Oval. What I really liked about Scoresby last week was the game of Benny Bronskeet and Paul Chadwick. I thought Bronskeet was best on ground. He nullified the influence of Stewie Kemperman. He went forward and got dangerous as well and kicked 3 goals. Chadwick provided him plenty of run off half-back, as did Thomas Warby. David Marcius and the Doc, Matty Krawczyk, rotated forward. They provided big bodies in their small forward line that was led by Kirby McConnell and the 2 Hogle boys, Chris and Jaden. Scoresby, they've got a fantastic mix at the moment, and they got first use of the ball out of the middle through the influence of big Lukey Van Reenen. Tomorrow, if Lilydale are going to be any chance, Benny Power, the ruckman from Lilydale, needs to try and exploit a little bit of the immobility of Luke Van Reenen around the ground. If he can do that, it might be a way that Lilydale can get on top. Daniel Breeze, he's a star at the moment. Ryan Breeze has been great through the midfield. And Robbie Allen and Nick Sargent are providing the young blood that the Falcons need to take it right up to some of these top teams. I like Lilydale in this one, but I'm still going to tip Scoresby. I reckon the Falcons can match it with the Magpies all day, but when the feathers are flying late in the final quarter, I reckon the black and white Magpies will get over the blue and gold Falcons.
Should be a fantastic game, Peter Baird, and Lilydale will go into this contest with plenty of confidence after their win earlier on in the season. But Scoresby are on a bit of a roll. They've won their past 5, and my man, Big Ben Bronskeet, is in very good form, as well as the Hogle boys. Scoresby for mine at home. Take a breath, gents. All 21 games done and dusted. Thorough, in-depth analysis as always. Whatever team you support, I hope your team is able to get the 4 points tomorrow. Make sure you tune in to 98.1 Radio Eastern FM or stream us live on www.efl.org.au tomorrow afternoon for the big radio game. Ferntree, Gully and Sylvan. Third spot is on the line in Division 4. Looking forward to getting out there and calling this one 1 till 6 p.m. on 98.1 FM or on www.efl.org.au EFL Game Day.
And make sure you tune into EFL Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sunday morning when we chat to the winning coaches from around the Eastern Football League. Proudly brought to you by Akira Urgent Care.
And your must-have midweek EFL fix, don't forget the huddle. Next Wednesday night between 6 and 7 p.m. on 98.1 Radio Eastern. We'll have another club in Club Corner and bring you a lighter look at the Eastern Football League.
Plenty of great games around the Eastern Football League tomorrow. Make sure you go out and go local for your football. Enjoy your afternoon tomorrow, Dan. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, I'll be out at Ferntree, Gully, Sylvan. Can't wait for that one.
Where will you be tomorrow afternoon, Peter Baird?
I'm heading out to Capital Reserve for the battle between the 2 teams that were promoted from Division 4, the Glen Waverley Hawks and Heathmont. A final spot on the line for the Jets, perhaps, and the Glen Waverley Hawks looking to consolidate a top 3 spot. Can't wait to get out there.
We all know that you're actually not going to watch the football. You're there to have a bit of a go at the Glen Waverley Hawks hamburger out there at Capital Reserve. Enjoy it, Pete. And everyone out there, enjoy your afternoon at the Eastern Football League matches. That's all. We're done and dusted here on the Friday preview. And as a wise man once said, stick a fork in us, we're done.